A lot of times in these men's spaces especially, a lot of the conversation is centered around what men need to be doing to have access to women. Not that men, in my opinion, shouldn't have purpose, passions, hobbies, direction in life. And when I talk about personal achievement and you becoming the best version of yourself, it's all about you achieving a level of freedom for yourself as a man. It's never about accessing women or accessing relationships or what's between a woman's leg. Again, that can be a part of your equation in terms of what you want to achieve. But ultimate freedom, ultimate quality of life comes when those things are just an addition to what you've already established in a man. That's why I don't use words on my channel as this high value man and all of this other nonsense that they've created in these men's spaces. Because again, they're just like clapping seals, performing for pre-owned box. I focus on a man's purpose, a man's competency, and how he lives his life. His man's character. For most importantly, a man's character is what I think is valuable. But these spaces have become about, being these performative seals. But the conversation never shifts about how is a man supposed to be treated and respected? A man who's achieved this success, a man who's strong in his masculinity and his manhood. That's the conversation we need to have a conversation about. Not this ability to access pre-owned, which is anybody with a crisp 50 in their pocket can get access to. That's not an achievement. When I see a man, especially a Gen X man my age, talking about game and having access to pre-owned and I got game and all that stuff, here's a guy that's a loser in life, or a guy with low self-esteem. Because again, men that have lived, that have experienced women, that have experienced relationships, that have been through stuff, don't put a high access on getting access to pre-owned. We don't. We focus on the substance of people. That's why I don't never call men incels or any of that stuff. I call men jellyback simps, because that simp virus is deadly and we don't want it spreading. But getting back on topic, we got to talk about more about how men are supposed to be treated and respected. Because we live in a gynocentric gynocracy, and a lot of men make a lot of profit on selling men that, again, their entire mission of acquiring women, as opposed to what the women that come into your space, the value they're supposed to bring, or whether the worthiness that they're supposed to bring, or their ability to offer you value. What are they supposed to do? How are they supposed to behave? How are they supposed to treat you? Even we see in marriage and relationships today, where it's a one-sided arrangement, where the focus is all about her, and men playing this balancing act of how they should maintain and keep a woman or whatever. Not that men shouldn't be competent in understanding female nature. And I talk from the perspective of a circle of energy. But what about them understanding male psychology and men's nature? That's the absent part of the equation. And that's what some of these content creators don't talk about. Women are supposed to understand men. And the same amount of effort that you pour into understanding women, they're supposed to pour that into understanding men. And that's the greatest imbalance that we see in this society with gynocentrism and a gynocracy, and especially with matriarchal culture. The focus is about men, and men being raised to serve women. That's why you see all these guys like the Scott Galloways of the world, and why the young men have rebelled. Just tell them to kick rocks, because their focus is on men being better, but his focus really is on saving women. They still see men as these disposable tampons, and it's all about being better, but never ask yourself the question, are the women that you want them to be better for, are they better? Are the women better? And I would make the argument, that there's a bunch of loser women out here, and it's even worse because they're born with a biological advantage, seeing that men have 20 times more testosterone. Then there are these men you call incels and whatever else. They're also a bunch of female bums that men don't talk about. Women have had the power and the ability to earn their own money and square themselves away. And many of them are losers. And the only thing they have going for them is pre-owned. They have not developed themselves, and they're certainly unworthy of being in a relationship with a man. And they're only raised with this take narcissism that you see, where they're in their mindset and mentality, when they come to relationships, they think the only thing they can need to be offering is pre-owned. And trust me, they plan to manipulate the situation and ration that out to gain control and power over certain men. Other men, they can't do that. They just walk right out the door. But that's all they think they have to bring to the table. And I would say that men have created that environment. I mean, they've used the government and feminism to, maybe structure the environment and raise the value on certain types of access for certain men who don't know any better. But for the men who know better, access is plentiful. Hey, good morning, brother. How you doing? But the conversation is always about what men need to be doing better, what men need to be doing for women, and how men need to be, and that's why I never got into that high value shit. Good quality, solid men, hardworking men, in my opinion, are as high value as you can get. Because again, your measurement is based on this false idea of value itself just being measured by economic reach and resources. Because there's a lot of men who fall into that category whose self-esteem is at the bottom of the toilet. And very quickly when they get in a relationship with women, the women only sees them as a means to an end in terms of getting money. That's why you see the Tyreses and the Will Smiths and all these other men out here getting their ass cooked by these women, because in essence, when you try to define high value just purely by resources alone, and not by a man's self-esteem, his confidence, how he feels about himself, how he treats himself, his confidence, and all those things are combined. But that was a terrible, creation. And it goes back to the same thing. What exactly are you doing? You're still a clapping seal. You're still a clapping seal. You're still controlled by women's definition of what your value is as a man, as opposed to men having a value and being judged by his competency, his skills, his craft, his talents, and his character. We're judging men by their ability to access something that can be purchased for a few bucks. Period. And that's the dysfunction that we see in men's content. I am a better man than you because I get access to pre-owned, or I'm gaming women. Who the hell has time for that stupid shit? You talk that shit and you go to Asia, you travel around the world, they don't even participate in that goofy shit. Everybody wants to be a pimp or some type of... Pimps are degenerates. Period. They're degenerates. Most of them game dudes or whatever the hell out there in the streets. Crusty, broke, dusty, low self-esteem having men, because the center of their value, they value their manhood, their masculinity, by your ability to talk a woman into giving you something that's worth what in real life, in real reality. Real men who have had success and access to women don't even bother, especially if they've had it all their life. They don't even bother calling men incels and all that other shit. Because for them, access has been natural their whole life. Good morning, folks. And they understand that sex ain't nothing but a memory. So we really don't have a guy like me is not gonna have those type of conversations, you know. But I will have a simp conversation because it ruins the dating pool. It ruins community, destroys society. Because they're all into this, encouraging, especially the unconscious simp. The reach for them is astronomical because they will encourage a men that getting with single moms and baby mamas and being cleanup men and being the last pick of the draft and being guy number 55 or guy number 100 is a good deal. Because they've been thirsting after that chick that they couldn't date, that wouldn't touch them when they were 21, and finally she old and burnt out. She gave them a chance. And they think they've hit the ball in the park, so they start virtue signaling and talking to men. When I want young men to get with women when they're young and unspoiled. Unspoiled mean that they haven't been ran through by sexual liberation. And build your own family. Don't take nobody's hand-me-down family. Build your own family with your own kids. In your own kingdom. Not go around playing some man-save game or cleaning up after some man after, you know, she didn't get ran through by men and she's burnt out. And that's not no damn victory. Who the hell wanna take care of other men's responsibility? And that's why I get hard on guys like Boyce Watkins, that jellyback simp. And I like the guy. Don't think I don't like these guys because I say that. But I don't want him to spread the virus because, again, simp like him have reach. And they'll spread that simp virus. No. It's not natural for men to go out here take care of other men's kid. You know. Good morning. Me, I go drop my donation down at the Boys and Girls Club and keep it moving. I help out once in a while, but I ain't trying to be no. Resources are precious, especially nowadays in this economy. I got no time to be raising no other men's kids. Why shouldn't a man want his own kids in his own kingdom, his own family? That's what I don't like about the simps. Encouraging our young men to be cleanup men. And encouraging our young men, especially these PUAs and all the other guys, that access to pre-owned is the measure of a man. Instead of your competency, your skills, your purpose, your trade, your ability, you should be able to, as a man, live for years by yourself without women around and still be functional. You get up every day. I'm exercising now. How about trying to stay in shape because you want to just walk up some stairs without dying, or you want to be able to look down and see your damn Johnson instead of worry about women? Don't get me wrong. I love the ladies, but why not just be in shape because you want to feel good? You want to be healthy and live a good life. Why does it have to be about women? And that's the mindset men have to get to. You're doing things because you love yourself, damn it. Because you're trying to access a $50 piece of ass. You're in madness, insanity. I don't get that thinking. That's when I look at these dating coaches and all, I said, this is a goofy ass bastard who selling some slime ball dating course and game shit like he's some pimp. Dude been married for 20 plus years, 30 years he been married. What the hell he know about game out here in these streets in 2026? Buy my course, I'll teach you game. Game for what? For chicken heads? Nonsense. What these dudes, many dudes lack is self-esteem. And there's a mental health problem and mental health issues that's going on. You know, You've robbed these boys of strong masculine men and fathers. And that game is for damaged chicken-head women. And you don't have to sell what's already been sold anyhow. A woman that's truly into you, yeah, man, you don't need no game for that. Shit. In fact, she'll even help you. If she's really into you, she will help your ass because she sees you as her future. You only need game for dysfunctional, damaged women in the community, especially. Good morning. It's only for dysfunctional culture. You know, if that's what you're into. Good morning, good morning. Because the reality is, if all a man wanted was access, he could just go ahead and purchase that. Why would you need to game anybody when you could just make a transaction? That's what they're doing out here now. That's what dating and relationships become. Purely prostitution. You don't need to game a sale. It's good. If that's what your life is about, acquiring pre-owned used box, why would you waste your time running game? That's because, again, if you're broke, dusty, degenerate, loser bastard, you have to sit around on the phone gaming women all day long. A hard-working, successful man wouldn't even do, man, he just go ahead and make a transaction and get the pounding and get on about his life. Get back to his trade or his hobby. Who the hell will be sitting around at night talking to women, trying to convince them that you are a catch or some shit like that? Or trying to talk them out of their panties that 100 men have been in. That's mental illness. Who does that shit? Losers. Bums. Men with no purpose, no hobbies, no mission in life, no direction in life. That's who does that nonsense. You don't have nobody has time for that goofy shit. Especially in 2026. With morning. Where we're dealing with a world that's completely gone delusional with social media. And with many men nowadays, or some of these women, the way they think, they feel disrespected and offended. If a man walks up to them that is not what they have envisioned in their mind, it's almost like you've lowered their value. Oh, and they will be mean. Trust me. They will be mean and disrespectful when a man that they think has lowered their value comes up and talks to them. They feel like you've been disrespected, man. It's a goofy thing, man, to think about it. If you really think about it, you know, how the world has changed. And that's why when I see these guys, and what the funny thing about it was to some of these guys as well is they will sit around waiting for some man, like one of those passport bros that I saw recently that went to Thailand and got with this 304. Obviously, this brother has a self-esteem problem and maybe some mental health issues and probably need to book a session with the coach or clinician and get some therapy, right? But they sit around all day long waiting for stories like that. So they can be like, oh yeah, look at this guy right here. Look at him. He traveled all the way over there and he failed. That's why I need to get my game course. Look, you see what happens? Stay here in America and get my game course. Buy my game course. A Peaceful Life has no game course to sell you. And the reason why is because I recognize that game is not the issue. We have mental health and self-esteem issues. When you live in a society that is beaten down men, rob them of their self-esteem, rob them of their purpose. And you have a lot of men that have exploited this for profit. Not that you shouldn't get value for offering information. You can donate to this channel. The Cash App's down there, keep the content going. You know, I mean, you got to make some money on these channels. Otherwise, the time and energy, you know, becomes, you know, I mean, you help as many, or you contribute information and whatever you can and pass along, you know, as much as you possibly can. My goal and my objective is men's mental health, and especially helping the young men. But if you create a society and a situation where you've basically attacked manhood and masculinity for so many years, that you get these roaches that show up out of the, that crawl up out of the woodworks, recognizing what has happened to men, especially young men, and they want to sell them on the wrong thing, which is slick talking, goofy ghetto pimp game. When of you, me being a police officer, I know as many of those game pimp guys have been on crack and live a life of pure low frequency and degeneracy. They ain't got no real value to offer to society, and most of them are the drug addict degenerates of this world. You don't want to be that shit, laced with STDs and venereal diseases and getting locked up in and out of jail up in there. Who wants to live that type? Who wants to listen to a guy like that? That's not a respectable human being. Nobody wants to get, that's that slick talking bum ass shit. When the real problem is the virus itself, which is low self-esteem. Fix the virus and your game is fixed. Understand some things you can learn about female nature, and those things you can learn. But the most important critical thing is self-esteem. How you feel about yourself. Good morning, good morning. Once you understand that, look at these ducks. Once you understand that the issue is self-esteem, and you fix that, you've solved 90% of your problems with women. 90% of your problems are solved with women by fixing your own self-esteem. Period. Because if the deal ain't good, you're gonna go with none of the above. Right. So the brother they showed in Thailand, look at him. He has extremely low self-esteem. That's why he was not able to identify the situation, and there's a mental health issue and delay.
What's up, man? Good morning. Good morning.
Good morning. How you doing? But the vultures are just waiting for him. Oh, look at that! Look at that! Look at that! Look at that! I've been to all these places, Thailand, whatever else. Zero issues with the 304s, because not because I don't have a self-esteem issue. So for me, or any other man, you know, it's a different experience. But they sit around waiting for men's failure so they can make videos and jump on them, because that's how they make their living. You know, they want to, especially the guys that are not living the life they want to, the grifters, the panderers, the men who are living life vicariously, watching and waiting for men's failures and men's F up and whatever else, and they're not really interested in adding any value to men's lives, you know, or they're looking for an opportunity to virtue signal, especially these content creators who get jealous over one content creator making more money than the other one, and or their egos get involved and they get into beefing with each other about who has the best grifting product out here. And none of that shit is centered around helping you. They don't care. They just want to make money. Period. You know? They just want to make money. I understand business. But the conversation, whenever you see the conversation, how you doing, brother? 99% centered around what you should be doing for women, or what you should be doing to get women, as opposed to how you're supposed to be treated and respected as a man. You know you're dealing with grifts. You know you're dealing with grifts. And that's why I'm glad my brother Kosher Condition, Paul Elam's coming into space, brothers like Dr. L, competent, qualified people. Dr. L is a retired captain, police captain. Kosher Condition is a certified therapist. I'm retired law enforcement. You understand you're dealing with competent human beings, not grifters selling goofy products on the internet with no verifiable history of how they live their life. You don't know how these people live in the real world. A lot of them, after they get done making these videos, driving around in their, rented car and showing fake wealth, they're just struggling to get by every day, hoping that you will buy their goofy product so that they can keep flexing extravagant lifestyles or keep talking that slick talk shit out the side of their mouth. Half of these dudes are cucked, living at the house themselves, but they know how to talk slick game. This is why you gotta focus on people's actions and their behavior. Does their actions and their behavior align with what they're talking about? That's the critical. That's why these guys be getting busted all the time. They get busted all the time because their actions and behavior, or somebody does an audit on them and find out, they're deeply in debt, living out their car, or they're the biggest simp on the planet, or they're into some scammery and nonsense because they're selling bullshit, as opposed to focusing on the real reality, the real situation, which is men's mental health and how men feel about themselves. And there's been, like I said, system in place to beat the masculinity out of men, feminize the male population, turn us all into a bunch of jellyback simps, all to benefit women, all to make us obedient, serving droids, cucks, working our ass off, working our ass to death, with no expectation of reciprocation, keeping it all about her and her spending. And that's what has happened. But anyhow, wrapping up my walk for the day. Peace and blessings to you guys. Make sure you hit the like button. We'll talk soon, man. I'm out.